After understanding the opponent's deployment, the situation at present was convenient enough for Zhang Yi and his team to take action. But before they could depart, someone suddenly called out to him. Of course, this person was none other than Uncle Yu, who was rushing over with Chunlei in tow. Zhang Yi glanced in their direction as they quickly made their approach. He was also a bit surprised that they came out of the shelter despite his earlier warning. The battle had just began and wasn't even over yet. Obviously, the two wanted to help just like they've done in the past. And any extra helping hand in this battle, although not desperately sought out for, was needed anyway, right? Chunlei even plucked up the courage to also come over. Boss, we haven't fought side by side for a long time. Take me with you. At the very least, I can play a role in controlling the situation on the battlefield. At this time, heavy snow fell from the sky, and in such an environment, it is indeed more suitable to have an ice and snow mutant by his side. But Zhang Yi still shook his head vehemently. You guys should stay in the shelter. If necessary, I will call you to act together. Hearing this, the two looked a little disappointed, so Zhang Yi patiently explained. At present, the strength of the enemy is within the controllable range, so we are enough to deal with them. But for the sake of safety, you and the people from the 3 major bases should not take action for the time being. And in case of any special circumstances, you guys can provide support from the outside. Although the opponent's strength was the weakest among the 3 areas, Zhang Yi dare not be careless, and must make proper arrangements. The two understood this and nodded slightly, although they still wanted to join the fight regardless. However, now was an important war period, and they can't do anything recklessly. Zhang Yi was about to leave, but after thinking about it, he took out a box of holy silver bullets and the latest anti-material sniper rifle from his alternate space, and gave it to Uncle Yu. The materials used in this rifle were relatively rare, and Zhang Yi currently only has more than 3,000 rounds. So 20 rounds should be enough for Uncle Yu. If you need anything, tell us at any time. We will rush over right away. Zhang Yi nodded slightly, got inside the armored van, and led the members of the Tengu team to Morning Dew Harbor. On the way, Bailey Chongqing unfolded a 3-dimensional map and began to arrange the battle plan. Captain, you are good at long-range sniping, so you should go to the commanding heights at A first, which is here. Qi Guangming, you and the captain will be responsible for long-range fire suppression. The harbor is a cone-shaped terrain, so we will attack from both sides simultaneously. The coastline has been blocked by ships from the East China Sea region, so there is no need to worry about them escaping. When the time comes, Liang Yu and I will deal with the pirate leader Canute, and the others will be responsible for cleaning up the miscellaneous soldiers. There was nothing wrong with Bailey Chongqing's battle plan. They were encircling and suppressing with an absolute advantage in force, and at the level of high-level mutants, they were in an overwhelming advantage. Most of the ordinary pirates in the 4th Division group were just live targets in their eyes, and they were just weaklings who could only shoot with simple AKs. After Bailey Chongqing finished speaking, he looked at Zhang Yi and asked for his opinion. Did he have anything to add? Zhang Yi nodded slightly, but he had no problem with the plan. He just wanted to remind his team about their safety. If they were going to do this, they should never underestimate their opponents. And always remember, safety first. The group replied in unison that they understood. Zhang Yi and his team arrived near Morning Dew Harbor in less than an hour. They got out of the armored van and chose to walk forward to avoid being ambushed by the enemy. In terms of defense, their battle suits are much better than armored vehicles. Therefore, the role of the battle vehicle was only to get around. The group wanted to use a drone for reconnaissance, but due to the strong anti-reconnaissance awareness, it wasn't advisable. Zhang Yi asked Meng Xiu if she can use her ability to detect the distribution of the enemy's local troops. But Meng Xiu replied that her ability only covers a range of 3 kilometers, and their current location is at least 5 kilometers away from the port area. Zhang Yi thought for a moment. Now the heavy snow has covered almost all buildings. The periphery of Morning Dew Base was a large flat snowfield, and it is difficult to find a suitable shelter on the snowfield. If they approached just like that, they would be easily discovered by the enemy. However, if they could approach quickly, they would still have an absolute advantage. Although the pirates were defending the base, they did not know the terrain better than him. He told Xue Miao to set off a storm to interfere with the pirates' sight. Xue Miao stepped forward, and with his wind ability, which was easy to use in such a blizzard, as long as a storm is created, a natural shelter can be formed to block the view. Xue Miao summoned a huge storm, forming a blizzard in front of the port area of the base. The members of the Tengu team then took advantage of the blizzard and rushed directly to the harbor of the base as quickly as possible. These sudden changes quickly attracted the attention of the pirates. Canute sat in his armored chariot with a smug look on his face, revealing a mouthful of shark-like sharp teeth. Are the regular troops from the Jiangnan district here already? They've arrived just in time. Guys, start killing. He roared, and the pirates around him also raised their guns frantically and roared wildly. These desperate criminals were not afraid no matter who they are facing. They are people who put their own life and death aside. On the snowy plain, over at the harbor base, these pirates laughed wildly and opened fire in the direction where Zhang Yi and his men were approaching. Their mutants did not take the initiative to attack, but lurked in the dark, waiting for the opportunity to fight in close combat. The sound of gunfire was dense, but this kind of ordinary bullet couldn't cause any damage to their opponents, mainly due to their combat uniforms. Not to mention that their poor shooting skills also couldn't aim through the blizzard accurately. Leading the charge, Bailey Chongqing rushed to the front, and he roared in a low voice. Don't worry about those small fries and eliminate the mutants first. We must resolve the battle as quickly as possible. But just when the team were about 1,000 meters away from the harbor's defense line, a very abrupt position appeared, and Bailey Chongqing was bounced back at once. He managed to quickly stabilize himself skillfully. The others were also caught off guard and faced the same challenge as their vice-captain did earlier. What is this? There is an invisible wall right ahead of us. Some sort of a transparent wall. In a place they could not see properly, there was indeed a transparent wall blocking their way. Zhang Yi's eyes condensed. He raised the white owl in his hand and shouted for his team members to get out of the way. Zhang Yi fired at the invisible wall, but the holy silver bullet that could break the magic actually stopped in front of the wall and then fell straight to the ground. Even the holy silver bullet is useless? What kind of ability is this? Just when they could not move forward, the sound of multiple engines sounded in the distance. The brave pirates rode snowmobiles one by one, crossed the container defense line of Morning Dew Harbor, and hurriedly rushed over. We caught them, and they seem like a big stack of fish. How much supplies can we exchange for these people's lives from the Jiangnan region? It's great. This trip was not in vain. Zhang Yi and his companions looked at the thousands of pirates rushing over like a group of hateful locusts. They actually dared to take the initiative to charge. Are they really courting death? Wu Di sneered disdainfully. They don't know what kind of enemy they are facing yet. Pirates can only stir up trouble when they are at sea. But on land, they are equivalent to crippling one of their own arms. Not to mention ordinary squadrons. Even if the Dragon King came, he would not dare to fight with the investigation team. So in Wu Di's eyes, these people are undoubtedly looking for death. Zhang Yi looked at the group of pirates coldly without saying anything. For some reason, he had a bad feeling in his heart. He felt that something was wrong, although he couldn't place it. After thinking about it, Zhang Yi took a few steps back. As a result, his body once again felt the feeling of being blocked. His back hit another transparent wall, confirming his suspicion. Sure enough, his hunch was correct, and their way had been blocked by the invisible wall. He calmly told the rest to observe their surroundings. It seems they may have fallen into a trap. When everyone heard this, they immediately began to observe their surroundings. And this observation immediately made them find something wrong. At some point, a huge transparent cage had appeared around them, trapping them all. Even the area above their heads and under their feet was not left out. In that very moment also, thousands of pirates had already surrounded them with weapons in hand. They had a grim smile on their faces, as if they had seen a fish being hooked. However, they did not rush to attack, let alone approach. A path was opened among the pirates, and a skinny, tall, devil-faced man walked out. He was the captain of the 4th Division of the Tianlong Pirates, Canute. Canute's cold eyes swept over the members of the Tengu squad with a smug look. Since you are here, introduce yourself. Although they were clearly at a disadvantage, Zhang Yi was not panicked at all. He did not even pay attention to Canute, but instructed his team members to try to break through. Unless the other party has an Epsilon-level mutant, there is no barrier of superpowers that cannot be broken through. Upon hearing this, the entire team, including Zhang Yi, immediately began to attack and test every corner. Bullets, superpowers, and even fists were used. But no matter how they attacked, the transparent barrier did not change at all. They did not have that strong power to break through the threshold of the barrier, and could only watch their attacks bounce back effortlessly. Some of the attacks were even absorbed like a stone dropped into an ocean. Anyway, seeing that none of his prisoners were paying any attention to him, Canute spread his arms and shrugged helplessly. You people are so rude. You don't even know basic manners. He extended his right index finger and continued. But I can tell you, don't waste your energy. As long as you enter this cage, you can't escape no matter what. Now, you are like a group of fucking useless birds in my cage. Among the pirates, there is a strange man named Chan Siyu. In his sight, his fingers spread out like worms, and the huge space where Zhang Yi and his team were located was a huge cubic cage. His ability was called drawing the ground as a prison. Just like the trap used by a bird, the cage is set up in advance to lock a range area. After anyone enters it, the drawing of the ground as a prison is triggered and the cage is officially activated. Any prey that enters can no longer escape. But in order to maintain this cage, he himself cannot move. Once his body moves or his original body dies, the spell will be lifted. This is the rule of his ability. The smile on Canute's face quickly disappeared as he waved his hand dismissively. Kill them! As soon as these words came out, thousands of pirates laughed wildly and pulled the triggers in their hands. From all directions, countless bullets formed a line of fire and shot into the cage. Zhang Yi activated Two-Realm Absolute for the first time to protect himself, Liang Yu, Flower, and Yang Xinshin. The range of the Two-Realm Absolute was only 1 meter. With this third activation of his dimensional barrier, he was invincible within a radius of 1 meter, but he could not protect anyone beyond this 1 meter radius. Fortunately, these bullets did not pose much threat to the rest of the team, so everyone used their skills to resist the dense bullet attack. This is wrong. Our attacks cannot be launched, but they can attack us in this area. Is the siege ability used by the other party one way? Bailey Chongqing shouted loudly, while using the Feng Tian in his hand to block the bullets. Zhang Yi was not in a hurry at all. Although he was in a cage, as long as his different dimensional space could be used, he would still be invincible in defense. At this moment, another mutant among the pirates suddenly jumped high in the air with his highly raised arms spread out. And above him in the sky was a massive rock with a diameter of tens of meters. Under his control, the giant rock was hurled towards the group like a cannonball. Bailey Chongqing was about to step forward to resist, but Zhang Yi thought that if the huge rock was broken, their space for action would be greatly restricted. Even if they had great abilities, it would be difficult to exert their strength. Zhang Yi persuaded Bailey Chongqing to retreat. He would handle the incoming attack. However, due to the enormity of the attack, Zhang Yi knew he would be distracted for a brief second, so he told Liang Yu and Flower to guard his blind spots. After Zhang Yi said this, he deactivated his Two-Realm Absolute and activated his usual dimensional gate to block the direction where the rock flew. The huge rock silently sank directly into Zhang Yi's alternate space. Canute frowned knowingly. Is this the guy that the Ronin asked me to kill? As expected, it's just as the intelligence said. His defense ability is pretty good, and there are some tricks to it as well. What a pain. However, as long as he can't leave the cage, I can wear him to death sooner or later. Many of the pirates had already brought out shoulder cannons and rocket launchers. They believed that even if the Tengu squad was a team of high-level mutants, their abilities will sooner or later be exhausted. And at that time, their flesh and blood will be ruthlessly destroyed by hot weapons. For the Tianlong pirates, this was a long hunt, and they have enough patience. However, Zhang Yi opened two-dimensional gates and directly confiscated all the attacks from the two directions with the strongest firepower. The swallowing energy of the dimensional gate was limited, but this kind of hot weapon attack, in order to reach the upper limit of his dimensional gate's swallowing energy, at least an entire arsenal must be emptied. And Zhang Yi knows that that would still not be even close to enough. But at this moment he suddenly had an idea. Attacks from the outside can cross the cage barrier, but their attacks cannot be fired. What is the basis for determining the boundary? After thinking of this, Zhang Yi made a bold attempt. He raised his hand and used the dimensional door to collect a large amount of ammunition. Then he aimed at the pirates outside and reflected them. The shoulder cannons and rocket launchers flew back the same way they came. Those pirates didn't have combat uniforms on them, and dozens of them were blasted and shot into sieves in an instant. Zhang Yi's eyes lit up and a smile appeared on his lips. I know what this cage is about. Drawing a prison on the ground is a rule-based ability. Zhang Yi learned its rules through his own experiments. That is, once an object is defined as existing in the cage at the beginning of its formation, it can no longer leave the range of the cage. Objects that are not defined are not affected by the rules. A primary example was Zhang Yi and his team. They cannot shoot through the cage with bullets. But the bullets shot by the pirates from the outside world are not affected and can even be bounced back. Bailey Chongqing and the others have also discovered this rule. But the problem is that they still can't figure out how to get out of the transparent cage. What if the other party stops attacking and just wastes time with them here, or changes the means of attack? What should they do? Canute thought so too. After seeing that Zhang Yi could bounce all their attacks, he immediately gave an order for all pirates to stop attacking. They stopped, but Zhang Yi, on the other hand, didn't intend to stop. Zhang Yi showed a mischievous smile on his face, and his eyes swept across all the pirates at the scene. The mutant who used his supernatural power to besiege them must be among them. And as long as the mutant was killed, the cage would disappear immediately without the source of power. Make some room for me. I'll count to 3, and everyone must squat immediately. The group didn't understand what Zhang Yi wanted to do. However, since he was the captain, they naturally had to obey his orders. 1. Zhang Yi opened his dimensional door. 2. Thick gun barrels appeared in the dimensional door. 3. Everyone squatted down immediately, and around Zhang Yi, in the huge space, the muzzles of 500 artillery pieces stretched out from his alternate space. These were the large quantities of weapons that Zhang Yi, as the captain of the Tengu team, had asked Blizzard City for with his own authority. These weapons were bulky and difficult to carry for ordinary mutants. These weapons that had great power but were slowly eliminated due to the coming of the Ice Age. But in his hands, they were still powerful. Zhang Yi had already loaded the 500 cannons with shells, and they were ready to be fired at any time. Today's weapons can be connected to intelligent systems and do not require manual operation. Zhang Yi simply used the intelligent operating system on his wrist to issue an order. In an instant, 500 artillery pieces roared deafeningly and fired at all the pirates in all directions. Such a scene was unimaginable to anyone. One person could actually transform into a freaking giant artillery turret in an instant. The pirates were too confident, so they were less than 200 meters away from the cage where Zhang Yi and his men were. A round of volleys of 500 artillery pieces was just like firecrackers blasting cow dung, blasting everything into pieces and flying everywhere. But all that was flying in the sky were their broken bodies, which really looked like fireworks, colorful. As soon as the artillery appeared, Canute and the other mutants had already reacted. Canute's body quickly became huge, and his clothes were torn apart by his bulging skin. His epidermis began to turn gray-blue. The texture of his skin was like a knife, and the corners of his mouth were stretched to the back of his ears. In an instant, he turned into a gray-blue giant shark that was more than 10 meters long. The huge body stretched across the ground, but was as flexible as if it were underwater the moment he got up. His body flexibly swept away dozens of shells, saving the lives of hundreds of pirates behind him. In other directions, there were also mutants exerting their strength. But even so, they could not stop the 500 shells that were fired instantly. In just a moment, more than half of the 1,000 pirates of the 4th Division were killed. Zhang Yi sighed in his heart, extremely pleased with this outcome. Unfortunately, this kind of artillery salvo can only be used once, because he didn't have time to reload the 500 cannons. But the effect of this attack was already very impressive. It also verified his conjecture. That is, the objects in his space were not defined by the rules of drawing a line to make a prison. Canute looked at his men who had been torn into pieces, listened to their painful wails, and looked at Zhang Yi with great anger. Damn bastard! I'm going to fucking kill you! His entire body was actually supported by his 2 extremely short feet. The strange thing was that his huge body did not hinder his movements at all. Anything that touches his body will ripple like water. Canute stared at Zhang Yi and the others in the cage. He wanted to launch an attack immediately and kill this annoying guy and his entire team. But when he thought of Zhang Yi's ability, he did not attack rashly. Zhang Yi's alternate space can absorb almost all attacks and then bounce them back. Anger cannot bring him victory, but will make him make more mistakes. Zhang Yi was also thinking about how to break this transparent cage. So many pirates have just been killed, but the cage was still there. In other words, the caster has not been killed at all. Zhang Yi looked at Canute's huge body. That mutant must have been protected by him. Although he could not escape from the cage for the time being, Zhang Yi was still quite confident in his abilities. The other party had no way to deal with them. Bailey Chongqing and the others watched Zhang Yi put away the 500 cannons. At this time, he understood why his captain asked for so many seemingly useless heavy firearms back then. Yi and the others looked at their captain, and their eyes also showed admiration. As expected of their captain, he thought of a way to crack the opponent's ability so quickly. But at this moment, Gao Changkong's message prompt suddenly appeared on Zhang Yi's wristwatch. Chaos, it's bad. The situation has changed. Don't rush to encircle and suppress the pirates. This is very likely a huge trap. Zhang Yi's pupils shrank suddenly as a chill ran down his spine. What do you mean? In Linhai City, Gao Changkong and the members of the Samsara squad were standing in a ruin. In front of them, there were more than a dozen corpses lying on the ground. Some of them were dressed exactly like the Eclipse troops. The ones that appeared in Linhai City were not the real Eclipse troops at all. We were all fooled by them. Gao Changkong's voice kept coming to Zhang Yi's ears. Think about it. Where else can they appear if not in Linhai City? Who are they most afraid of, and who do they want to kill the most? Zhang Yi's eyes widened. and an ominous feeling suddenly enveloped him. His scalp even felt a little numb. The person that Eclipse Moon wanted to kill the most was naturally him, the only person who could crack Mayumi Takeuchi's prediction ability. Canute opened his huge shark mouth and roared, "Ronin, why don't you show yourself already?" Zhang Yi raised his head and looked into the distance. On a low hill, he saw the faces of several old acquaintances. Fengguangyuan Jin and his Eclipse Moon members were all there. The members of Eclipse Moon did not go to Linhai City, but appeared in Tianhai City, right in front of Zhang Yi and his team. It was time for the real and awaited battle to finally begin.